Good morning. Hello. Today will be information concerning Paleo-Indians of North USA states, Pennsylvania and North Carolina. This small lecture will concern various raw materials used for preparation of implements by Paleo-Indians. So there are these Indians, not Paleo-Indians. Picture is taken from internet, but Paleo-Indians look like similar. So this story I like to tell you is about raw materials used for preparation of arrowheads and knives and scrapers for preparation of skin and so on. So there are examples of various arrowheads collected in Nebraska, and they are between 8 and 11,500 years old, and represent various raw materials. And you see the shape of these heads, of these points, how they call in states. There are various. In Nebraska there are mostly various types of jasper and obsidian sometime, but I like to tell you about these materials, raw materials from North United States, Pennsylvania and North Carolina. I was invited by Penn State University some years ago for scientific reason and to say some lectures, give some lectures concerning geology, archaeology. I met many interesting persons. Between them was a doctor who worked in problems concerning raw materials used by Paleo-Indians, and we met in the building, Carpentier building, Department of Anthropology, because in Department of Anthropology there is part concerning working in Paleo-Indians, problems of Paleo-Indians, and generally working in archaeology. There are no separate department of archaeology. There is Department of Anthropology, and in this department there are various smaller divisions where people work on anthropology, on paleozoology, and on archaeology too. There is written what is the problem and how I start to solve this, to make investigation, and it was done for this mineralogical examination were done for determination of kind of rocks present at this part of Pennsylvania for precise identification of raw materials used by Paleo-Indians. Determination of these raw materials may help determine the routes of migration of Indians to different part of North America. It is from point of view of science and migration of Paleo-Indians It's very important, and some people in States work on this, and we know that man appeared in North America relatively late, because the oldest data of archaeological sites of Paleo-Indians, there are about 15,000 years, 15,500 years. So this means that people migrated to North America relatively late. Material for investigation was collected by Dr. Bondar. This is a scientist from Penn State University. He worked in Pennsylvania in the field and collected 13 samples of various types of rocks, and I obtained these samples and took to Poland, and I did examination. Now I like to tell you more detail about various modification of these raw materials. And part of samples were collected at State Pennsylvania. There are numbers of samples and localization of samples, as well as macroscopic determination of type of rock. At this part, the 7 samples were collected at South Mountain rhyolite, so most of them were called by Dr. Bodnar rhyolites, albo metarhyolites, this type. But after examination, we know that there are not only rhyolites, rhyolites, I think in English, but there are various types of siliceous rocks. This is area where samples were collected in northeast Pennsylvania, in central Pennsylvania. There are rocks built of various raw materials containing a lot of silica, so this means are relatively good for knapping, because in this part of states there are no typical flints or obsidians. And most popular is rhyolite. It looks like this. Seen feldspars, these light minerals, crystals, present in homogeneous mass composed of fine crystalline components, minerals. All classification and mineral determination I give you slightly later. This is an enlarged picture of this part. You see feldspars, sometimes biotite, sometimes rare pyroxenes. This is sample number 1. It's a modification of rhyolite. Again, we have not well crystallized mass composed of various very fine crystalline components and light feldspars. Enlarged picture look like this, and there is the scales all time. This was determined as rhyolite macroscopically because of similarity with these light feldspars. But after analysis, we know that it contains a lot of carbonates, so it's slightly modified rhyolite, not typical. And this, of course, is not rhyolite. This is siliceous rock with type of lamination. We don't know, I don't know, because it was collected by this Professor Bodnar. This lamination is due to crystallization in veins or due to sedimentation. It's difficult to say more precisely something more precisely about the genesis of this rock. It contains a lot of silica and a large picture of surface of this rock look like this. And next we have of course the rhyolite, a slightly other light, not red like these samples 1, 2, and 3. This fine crystalline, hypocrystalline mass, it's seen, homogeneous seen there. And there are biotides and pyroxenes and some feldspars. Structure is typical for rocks we may call rhyolites. Sample number 5, it's contain a lot of silica. There are rare feldspars, and this look like rhyolite, but very specific. Not too much phenocrystals, but this mass is very fine crystalline, difficult for macroscopic examination. And there we have again light modification of rhyolite with traces of so-called lamination, this flowing structure, typical for magmatic rocks of class of rhyolite, and very fine phenocrystals are present, biotite and pyroxenes and the feldspars seen macroscopically. And next type of rock I obtained for examination in Poland. This is look like rather sedimentary rocks, not typical magmatic rocks. As you see, the rock is very good for knapping because there are traces of retouche on this flake, and contain a lot of quartz, fine quartz, but contain carbonates too. And it's not typical for rhyolite. And when we look to determination, mineralogical determination of mineral composition, we see that samples contain between 75 and 95%, 97% of silica, and samples number 0, 1, and 2, probably first of all 0, 1, and maybe 3, they are composed of silica, but rhyolite, typical sample 0, contain feldspars, but this don't contain too much. But samples 2 and 3 contain a lot of relatively a lot of carbonates. And next samples, again samples 4 and 5, are rich in silica, contain feldspars and pyroxenes and traces of ore minerals and no carbonates. And samples number 6 and 7, they contain a low amount of silica and contain quite a lot of carbonates, very rare feldspars. This means that most probably samples number 0, 1, 4, and 5, there are rhyolites or samples connected with rhyolites, but samples number 2, 3, 6, and 7, there are probably samples of other origin, or represent veins, siliceous veins present in radiolarites, in magmatic rock, or these two samples even probably represent siliceous sedimentary rocks with classical parallel sedimentary structures. So again, sample 0, 1, and 3, there are magmatic rocks, most probably. The same concern samples 4 and 5, but samples 1, 2, 6, and 7, there are siliceous samples, good for knapping, but most probably there are not typical magmatic rocks. And next part of samples were collected in North Carolina, samples 8 up to 12, and they were described by Dr. Bodar as rhyolites, and some of them were not identified. Sample 12 is jasper, so it's volcanic tuff silicated by secondary silica, most probably. Let's look to the structures. And sample number 8 look like rhyolite. There is fine mass, fine crystalline mass with feldspars. It's seen under a large picture. Well, again, number 9, it's again rhyolite, so-called other way porphyr, with phenocrystals, and background composed of fine material, fine crystalline material. Sample number 10 look like completely other material, siliceous with traces of lamination. Maybe it's fragment of the vein, siliceous vein present in rhyolites or other type of rock. And again, sample number 12, it's siliceous rock of very fine special structure with containing small phenocrystals, so probably magmatic type of rhyolite, but not very typical, or other siliceous rocks of unknown origin. I know not too much about the rocks present in Aukrotz, because I didn't visit this place, and all what I obtained from Dr. Bodar, this is his macroscopic description. And sample 12, rather sedimentary siliceous rocks with traces of lamination. It look like this. And sample mineral composition of sample is collected in this table, and we see that samples 8, 9, 10, 11, they are composed of silica and contain admixture of other minerals, traces of feldspars, rare plagioclases, rare amphibos, practically no ore minerals, or very rare traces of carbonates, biotite, and muscovite. And between these samples, this one, number 12, is were observed under the microscope as completely other type of rock. And when we look to the diagram showing mineral composition of tested rocks, there are numbers of samples. 0 up to 12, one can see that mineral composition of all these samples from North Pennsylvania and surrounding areas, mineral composition is very diversified, and this drawing is done without quartz, so there are shown only accompanying minerals, and you see that, as I told, samples 0, 4, and 5 are similar one to each other. Samples, and there are rhyolites, typical, more or less typical. Fine structure with phenocrystals, etc. Samples 2, 3, 6, and 7 are of other composition and contain quite a lot of carbonates, so it's suggesting that there are of other origin. There are not typical rhyolites, but there are rocks good for knapping, but not connected with magmatic rocks. And samples from second place are diversified too, but all of them are more or less slightly similar because of composition. Completely other is sample number 12. It's look like a jasper, silicated secondary. But samples 8, 9, 10, and 11 are more or less similar. They contain a high amount of the quartz, not shown on this drawing. They contain traces of carbonates. They contain traces of ore minerals, and contain rare potassium feldspars. So, of course, there are not rhyolites. There is not a typical picture of rhyolites. There are siliceous rocks, maybe accompanying rhyolites at this area of Pennsylvania, or maybe there are of other origin. Some of them show structure, linear structure, type of lamination. So it may confirm that there are part of them that is of sedimentary siliceous rocks of sedimentary origin. So all this investigation will help identify implements made using tested raw materials. For Pennsylvania and surrounding states, this identification I present you now may help to determine the roots of historic migration of Paleo-Indians in northern USA, because knapping techniques are very similar, but raw materials, local raw materials are very typical and may help determine where this material from Pennsylvania was transported to surrounding states of USA. Of course, it's beginning of determination. There is a lot of other examination, but this is my small contribution to problem of Paleo-Indians, raw materials, knapping, and routes of migration of this our Paleo-Indians. So thank you for listening. There were some small mistakes, but sorry. It's not easy to speak about Paleo-Indians, mineralogy of various rocks, and similar things living in Krakow, in Poland. So, thank you again, and see you next time. Bye-bye, good day. Have a good day.